I died on a Tuesday morning, surrounded by the sterile hum of medical equipment, convinced that my life of rigid discipline had earned me a high place in paradise. I was wrong. I stood before a blinding white throne, trembling not with the joy of arrival, but with a terror that unmade my very soul. Because the face looking down at me was not a prophet, but a king I had been taught to respect, but never worship. He showed me a number that still haunts my waking hours. 90% of those who believe they are righteous are merely religious, and religion does not survive the crossing into eternity. I had spent 38 years building a fortress of good works and cultural piety, only to find that I had built it on sand, and the storm of eternity was about to wash it all away. My name is Amira, and before the aneurysm burst in my brain, I was a woman of envy-inducing precision and seemingly flawless character. I was a pediatric surgeon in a leading metropolitan hospital, a mother of 3 beautiful children, and a devout follower of the faith of my fathers. I wore my hijab with the pride of a crown, prayed 5 times a day without fail, and gave charity until it impacted our budget. To my community, I was the gold standard. To my husband, a dutiful partner. To my colleagues, a miracle worker. I had no vices, drank no wine, spoke no lies, and never missed a holy day. I was the architect of a perfect life, fully persuaded that my ledger was balanced in my favor. It happened during a routine procedure, a ventricular septal defect repair on a 6-month-old infant, a surgery I could perform in my sleep. The headache hit me like a sniper's bullet, a sudden thunderclap behind my eyes that dropped me to my knees instantly. I remember the scalpel slipping from my gloved hand, the clatter of steel on the tile floor echoing like a gavel striking a sound block. My vision tunneled into aggressive blackness, the frantic shouts of the anesthesiologist fading into a watery distance. I could feel my heart fluttering like a trapped bird, the pressure in my skull expanding until it eclipsed my thoughts. Then, absolute silence. The monitor flatlined. Time of death. 10:42 a.m. There was no tunnel, no gentle fading of the light, only an instant tearing of the veil that separates the temporal from the eternal. I was standing on a floor that looked like glass mixed with fire, and the air was thick with a holiness that burned my skin like dry ice. I expected the gardens of delight I had been promised, but instead, I saw him. He was brighter than 1,000 suns, clothed in a robe dipped in light, yet I could see the scars on his hands. He did not ask me about my ritual prayers. He did not weigh my charity. He looked into the core of my being and asked the one question that unraveled my entire existence. Amira, why did you honor the rules of my house but refuse to knock on the door? Confusion washed over me, a desperate panic, because I recognized him not as Isa the prophet, but as the Alpha and the Omega, the very breath of God. He waved his hand, and the first veil of my illusion was stripped away, revealing the truth of my personal life. I saw a library of books, representing my life, but the pages were blank. He showed me my prayer rug, worn threadbare by my knees. I saw myself bowing, reciting, meticulously washing. But then I saw the spiritual reality. A thick gray fog surrounded me. My words were hitting the ceiling and falling back down like dead birds. You spoke to the air, he said, his voice sounding like rushing waters. You loved the discipline of the prayer more than the one you prayed to. You worshipped your own obedience. The scene shifted violently, and I was floating above my own home, seeing it through spiritual eyes for the first time. Physically, it was immaculate, a testament to my obsessive cleanliness and order. Spiritually, it was a tomb. I saw dark, shadowy figures crouching in the corners of the living room, feeding off the atmosphere of legalism and fear I had cultivated. There were altars I didn't know I had built. An altar to reputation, an altar to academic success, an altar to cultural pride. These things were glowing with a sickly green light, pulsing like infected wounds. I realized with horror that my home was not a sanctuary of God. It was a museum of my own vanity, guarded by spirits that had no right to be there. invited in by my lack of spiritual authority. Then, the floor dropped out beneath me, and I was looking at my place of worship, the community I held so dear. I saw hundreds of people standing in rows, moving in unison, a beautiful ocean of submission. But then, the Lord touched my eyes again. The roof of the building vanished, and I saw a massive iron dome covering the congregation, blocking out the light of heaven. "They seek me with their lips," he whispered, and the sorrow in his voice broke me. "But they deny the Son, and in denying the Son, they have no bridge to the Father." I saw the emptiness of the rituals, beautiful, disciplined, but devoid of the regenerating power of the Holy Spirit. It was a dry well in the middle of a desert, offering the promise of water, but delivering only dust. The vision zoomed in, piercing the walls of my own living room to reveal the spiritual state of my family. I saw my eldest son, whom I had pressured into medical school, sitting on his bed with a black cloud wrapped around his head. I saw the seeds of resentment growing like thorny vines around his heart, choking his capacity to love. I saw my husband, a good man, withering away spiritually because I had never prayed for his soul, only for his success. I saw my daughter weeping in secret, starving for a love that wasn't conditional on her grades or her modesty. I realized I was raising them to be successful orphans, children who knew the rules of the house but had never met the father. I was leading them off a cliff, hand in hand, convinced we were marching toward glory. Suddenly, the ground opened, and the heat became unbearable, a sensory overload of sulfur and rotting flesh. I was not in the fire, but I was suspended over the precipice of the place of separation. I saw faces I recognized. Prominent leaders, religious scholars, people who had been praised as holy at their funerals. They were not being tortured by demons with pitchforks. They were being tormented by the truth. They were screaming out their justifications. We fasted, we gave, we abstained, but their words turned to ash in their mouths. The torment was the realization that they had possessed the map, but never took the journey. They had rejected the free gift of grace in favor of the wages of their own works, and now they were receiving exactly what they had earned: separation from the source of life. The scene shifted to a memory from 20 years ago, a moment I had completely forgotten, but which heaven had recorded in high definition. I was in university, sitting in a cafeteria across from a roommate named Sarah. She had tried to give me a Bible, her eyes full of genuine love. I saw myself pushing it away with a look of superior disdain, telling her, "I have the final revelation. I do not need the corrupted book." I saw the grief on the Lord's face as we watched this replay. "That was not a book you rejected, Amira," he said. "That was me knocking. That was the moment you chose pride over curiosity. You chose your heritage over your salvation." The weight of that single, casual rejection crushed me more than the vision of hell. He then pulled back the lens to show me the generational pattern of my people. I saw a vast, intricate web of bloodlines, stretching back centuries. I saw a heavy, dark blanket woven of tradition and fear covering millions of people. It was a spirit of bondage that masqueraded as piety. I saw how my grandmother had passed it to my mother, and my mother to me. A fear of questioning, a terror of being ostracized. We were prisoners who loved ourselves because we had decorated them so beautifully. The Lord showed me that my faithfulness was actually fear. Fear of family rejection, fear of losing my identity, fear of the unknown. I wasn't running toward God. I was running away from the cost of truth. The 8th level of revelation cut the deepest into my psychology. He asked me, "Do you know why you became a surgeon?" I wanted to say it was to help children, but the truth in the atmosphere silenced my lie. I saw a little girl, me at 7 years old, trying to earn her father's smile by memorizing verses. I saw the root of my drive, a desperate, aching need to be good enough to be loved. I had projected this onto God. I believed that if I could just cut perfectly enough, pray perfectly enough, I could force God to love me. Jesus looked at me, and for the first time, I felt pure, uncontaminated love. "You cannot earn what is already given," he said. "Your scalpel can fix a heart, but it cannot wash a soul. Only my blood can do that." Then came the courtroom. I stood alone. On one side of a great scale were my deeds, my surgeries, my prayers, my charity. They looked like piles of gold. But then, on the other side, a single feather was placed, the standard of God's holiness. The scale slammed down. My gold was lighter than breath. It was fool's gold. Without the weight of the Savior, my righteousness was nothing but filthy rags. I saw a line of people stretching to infinity. Good people, religious people, all stunned as their scales tipped against them. The verdict was read in silence, a vibration that shook the floor. Guilty of trusting in self. I had no defense. My hijab, my titles, my reputation, none of it could cover the nakedness of my sin. The final vision was a projection of the future if I were not to return. I saw my funeral. It was grand. People were wailing, praising my name. But then I saw 5 years later. My son had left the faith entirely, broken by the hypocrisy he sensed in me. My husband had remarried a woman just as rigid as I was. My legacy was a tombstone and a fading memory. I saw my soul descending into the gray fog, separated forever, conscious, regretful, and alone. I saw the absolute waste of a life that had potential, but lacked the power. I screamed. I screamed not for myself, but for my children who were following my map to destruction. Jesus stepped closer, his light consuming the darkness of the vision. "You have seen what is," he said, his voice sounding like a trumpet and a lullaby. "Now I offer you what can be." He held out his hand, and I saw the hole where the nail had pierced him. I am not a prophet who points the way. I am the way. I am not a teacher who explains the truth. I am the truth. Go back. But you cannot go back as Amira the surgeon. You must go back as Amira the daughter. He gave me 3 instructions. First, break the altar of your reputation. Second, tell your children that you were wrong. Third, read the book you rejected, for in it you will find me. The return was violent. It felt like being sucked through a straw and slammed into a block of concrete. I gasped, my body arching off the hospital bed. The alarms were blaring, the flatline tone replaced by the frantic beeping of a racing heart. I could smell the ozone of the defibrillator pads they were about to use. I grabbed the nurse's wrist with a grip of steel, my eyes wide with a terror and a joy she couldn't understand. "He is not a prophet," I screamed, my voice raspy and broken. "He is the Son. He is the Son." The room went silent. The other doctors looked at me as if the brain damage had been catastrophic. But I knew I was seeing clearly for the first time in my life. The recovery was medically impossible. The aneurysm had sealed itself, leaving only a scar that baffled the neurologists. But the real transformation was in my spirit. When I went home, the war began. I walked into my immaculate house and felt the spiritual heaviness I had seen in the vision. I went to my library and pulled down the religious texts that had been my pride. I didn't burn them, but I moved them aside. I found a Bible, the very book I had scorned, and I began to read. As I read the Gospel of John, the gray fog in my living room began to dissipate. For the first time, I prayed not in Arabic recitations I barely felt, but in my own language, pouring out my broken heart to a Father who listened. My husband thought I had lost my mind. The community whispered that the brain injury had made me an apostate. The persecution was immediate and intimate. I was removed from the hospital board. Friends I had known for decades crossed the street to avoid me, but I remembered the vision of my son with the black cloud around his head. I sat him down, tears streaming down my face, and I apologized. I told him, I taught you how to perform, but I never taught you how to be loved. I am sorry. I saw the vines around his heart loosen. It didn't happen overnight, but one by one my children began to ask questions. They saw a peace in me that all my years of rigorous prayer had never produced. This is the diagnosis I bring to you today, sharper than any scalpel I ever wielded. We are facing a pandemic of spiritual blindness. Millions of us are laboring under the yoke of religious systems that demand everything and promise nothing but a maybe. We are checking boxes on a list while our souls are starving. The statistics are terrifying, not the medical ones, but the spiritual ones. If 90% of religious people are missing the relationship, then our houses of worship are filled with the walking dead. We are building towers to heaven with bricks of our own making, forgetting that God already came down because we could never climb up. I have to ask you, and I need you to answer this in the silence of your own heart. Who is Jesus to you? Is he a historical figure? A great teacher? A prophet among many? Or is he the Savior who bridged the gap you can never cross? Do you have peace? Not the quiet of a suppressed conscience, but the peace that surpasses understanding? If you died right now, in the next 10 seconds, what would you offer the King? Your attendance record? Your charity? Your good reputation? I am telling you, having stood on that glass floor, none of it counts as currency. The only currency accepted in heaven is the blood of the Lamb. The urgency of this message burns in my bones. You do not have guaranteed time. You might have an aneurysm ticking in your brain right now, or a car crossing the center line tomorrow. The choice is binary, and it is brutal in its simplicity. You can continue to be your own savior, relying on your traditions and your goodness, and face the scale that will find you wanting. Or you can surrender. You can admit that your righteousness is a beautiful garment that covers a corpse. You can knock on the door that has been standing open for 2,000 years. I am Amira, and I was dead. I was a slave to a religion of fear until I met the Prince of Peace. I lost my reputation, I lost my status, and I lost the false respect of my community. But I gained my soul. I gained my children. I gained a love that does not require me to be perfect, only to be present. I came back to tell you that the veil has been torn. Do not stitch it back up with your pride. The King is coming, and he is not looking for employees. He is looking for his children. What will your answer be when the flatline sings its single final note? Will you be ready? It was a Tuesday, heavy with the humid heat of late August, and I was sitting in my living room, the prayer beads moving rhythmically between my thumb and forefinger. My name is Yasmin, 42 years old, a woman of devout practice, covered from head to toe in the modesty my culture demanded, a mother of 3 who believed her path was paved with the certainty of tradition. I was not sick, not in the way doctors describe sickness, but there was a heaviness in my chest that afternoon, a pressure like a stone hand squeezing the life from my lungs. I tried to stand up to fetch a glass of water, to cool the fire rising in my throat, but my legs dissolved beneath me, turning to vapor, and I collapsed onto the Persian rug that had been in my family for 3 generations. The sound of the glass shattering against the floor was the last thing my physical ears heard, a sharp punctuation mark at the end of a sentence I didn't know was finished. My daughter screamed my name, a sound that seemed to stretch and warp as if underwater. And then the darkness did not just fall. It swallowed me whole, absolute and suffocating, rushing into my nose and mouth like black water. I was standing in a void, stripped of the pain, stripped of the rug, stripped of the hijab that had defined my identity for decades. I looked at my hands, and they were translucent, glowing with a faint, terrifying energy. Then, the darkness was torn apart, not by a sunrise, but by a person. He did not arrive. He was simply there, and his presence was a physical force that knocked me to my knees, not in ritual submission, but in biological inability to stand before such power. He was light, living and breathing, brighter than 1,000 desert suns, yet not blinding, for he was the source of sight itself. I expected the stern judges of my tradition, the scales of deeds, the interrogation of angels. Instead, I saw a man with eyes like fire that did not burn but purified, and in his hands, I saw the impossible marks of a sacrifice I had been taught to deny. He spoke, and his voice was the sound of rushing waters and the whisper of a father. He asked me a single, devastating question that shattered my theology into dust. "Child, did you know me, or did you only know about me?" Before I could stammer a defense, the space around us shifted, and I was walking through the library of my own existence. This was the first level of unveiling, the record of days. I saw my life not as a linear timeline, but as a vast room filled with jars. Some were filled with gold, but most were filled with dust. He pointed to the jars of dust, and I knew instantly these were the hours I spent in religious performance, the prayers recited without heart, the fasting done for the approval of my community, the charity given to secure a reputation. He showed me a clock that measured not minutes, but intimacy. In 42 years, the clock showed only minutes of true connection with the divine, moments where my soul cried out in genuine need, rather than ritual obligation. I saw the idol I had built, and it was not a statue of stone. It was the idol of my own righteousness, the belief that I could earn my way into eternity through discipline. The statistics of my soul were laid bare, a ledger of bankruptcy where I thought I had millions. The scene dissolved and reformed, and we were standing inside my home, but I was seeing it with eyes of spirit. This was the second level, the architecture of the unseen. The walls of my house were covered in writing I had never seen before, displaying the secret thoughts and spoken words of my family. I saw the holy corner where I prayed, but spiritually it was dark, covered in cobwebs of fear and legalism. I saw that my devotion had not built a bridge to heaven. It had built a fortress to keep God out. There were altars in the living room, invisible to the naked eye but blazing in this realm. Altars to reputation, to academic success for my children, to cultural pride. I saw demons of anxiety and control sitting comfortably on the furniture, fed by our constant worry about what the neighbors thought. Jesus looked at me, his face etched with sorrow, and said, "You clean the outside of the cup every day, Yasmin, but you left the inside full of dead men's bones." Then, he took me higher, to a vantage point where I could see the religious structures of the world. I expected him to condemn only my faith, but he turned his gaze toward the steeple of a church down the street from my house, a place I had passed 1,000 times with suspicion. I saw inside, and my heart broke for him. This was the third level, the exposure of the assembly. I saw people singing with their hands raised, but their spirits were asleep, scrolling through mental social media feeds, worrying about bills, judging the person next to them. I saw the pulpit, and instead of fire, there was a fog of entertainment. He showed me that the Christian world I had been taught to despise was often just as empty as the rituals I performed, people wearing a label of grace as a license for apathy. He showed me that religious spirits operate in mosques and churches alike, blinding people with the mechanics of religion to keep them from the person of the Spirit. He wept over the buildings, saying, "They honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They teach as doctrines the commandments of men." The floor dropped out beneath us, and we were looking at the timeline of my family, the fourth level of revelation. I saw my eldest son, whom I had pushed so hard to be a doctor, to be the pride of our lineage. I saw his spirit shriveled, suffocating under the weight of my expectations. I saw the secret nights he spent weeping, the seeds of doubt growing into a tree of atheism because he saw no life in my religion, only rules. I saw my husband, a good man by worldly standards, walking in a gray fog of depression, neglected because I was too busy being pious to be a partner. I saw the cracks in our foundation that I had painted over with smiles and hospitality. Jesus showed me the future, a dark trajectory where my children would abandon all faith, not because of the world, but because they never saw the living God in their mother, only a harsh taskmaster. The pain of this realization was sharper than the heart attack that killed me. It was the realization that my goodness was the very weapon destroying my household. Then the light dimmed, and the temperature dropped to absolute 0, yet it burned. We descended to the 5th level, a place I had been warned about but had never truly understood. I did not see demons with pitchforks. I saw a vast gray wasteland of isolation. I saw faces there, people I recognized from history books, and people who looked like neighbors. The torment was not physical torture inflicted by others. It was the torture of the self, unlocked and unrestrained. I saw a man screaming, not because he was being burned, but because the greed that consumed him in life was now a living entity eating him from the inside out, and he had no way to satisfy it. I saw the religious hypocrites, their mouths sewn shut by the lies they had spoken, wandering in the darkness of their own making. They were there because they chose to be. They chose their pride over his mercy. The smell was the stench of rotting regret, and the sound was a cacophony of, "I was right, I was right," shouted into a void that didn't care. Jesus pulled me back from the precipice, and we were suddenly in a bright, sunny kitchen. My kitchen, 15 years ago. This was the 6th level, the flashback to the seed. I saw myself standing by the stove, a young mother. A neighbor, a Christian woman named Sarah, had knocked on the door. She had offered to pray for me when I was sick. In the memory, I politely declined, closing the door with a smile that hid my disdain. But here, in the spirit, I saw the spiritual reality. Sarah carried a light, a gift from the King, and I had slammed the door on the Holy Spirit. Jesus paused the scene. "That was the moment," he whispered. "I came to your door, offering you rest, and you chose pride. You chose the safety of your tradition over the risk of truth." I saw how that single decision created a timeline where my heart hardened, layer by layer, year by year, until the concrete was too thick to break. The kitchen walls expanded until they became the walls of the world. This was the 7th level, the pattern of the generations. I saw millions of women like me, and millions of men, trapped in the machinery of culture. I saw a black river of tradition flowing through history, dragging souls away from the ocean of God's love. I saw how the system, whether it was the legalism of the East or the materialism of the West, was designed by the enemy to keep us busy. Busy with rituals, busy with careers, busy with entertainment. I saw the statistical weight of it, a harvest field rotting because the laborers were arguing about the color of the sickles. I saw the lie that all paths lead to the same destination, exposed as a cruel trap. There was only one bridge across the abyss, and I was standing next to him, but the world was blindfolded, walking off the edge while singing songs of unity. He turned me to face a mirror that reflected not my face, but my soul's motivation. Level 8. "Why, Yasmin?" he asked. "Why did you strive so hard?" As I looked, the layers peeled back. I saw a little girl who felt unworthy of her father's love unless she was perfect. I saw that my entire religious life, my entire identity as a good Muslim woman, was a trauma response. I was trying to earn the love of a distant God because I hadn't received the unconditional love of an earthly father. I saw that my judgment of others was just a defense mechanism to hide my own insecurity. I wasn't pious, I was terrified. The realization broke me. I collapsed at his feet, weeping not for my sins, but for the sheer exhaustion of trying to hold up the sky for 40 years. I realized that the gospel I had rejected was the only thing that could have healed that little girl. The news that it is finished, that the price is paid, that love is a gift, not a wage. The scenery shifted to a great courtroom, the 9th level. It was vast, silent, and terrifyingly efficient. I saw myself standing there, and books were opened. But it wasn't just me, it was a multitude. I saw people who called themselves Christians, who wore crosses, who attended Sunday service. They walked forward with confidence, presenting their resumes. Lord, we prophesied, we cast out demons, we ran the food bank. And I watched with horror as the judge, with tears of blood in his eyes, whispered, "Depart from me. I never knew you." It was not about the work. It was about the intimacy. They had used his name to build their own kingdoms. Then it was my turn. I had no resume. I had no cross. I had only my rituals, which now looked like filthy rags. The gavel was raised. I knew the sentence was just. I had rejected the Son, and in doing so, I had rejected life itself. The silence was absolute. The weight of eternity pressed down on my shoulders. "Look," he said, pointing to a screen that materialized in the air. "This is the end of your story if you stay here." Level 10. I saw my funeral. It was grand, solemn, filled with chanting and incense. People spoke of my piety. But then I saw the weeks after. I saw my children fighting over the inheritance. I saw my daughter taking off her covering, not in freedom, but in rebellion, diving into a life of drugs to numb the pain of a mother she never really knew. I saw my husband remarrying within 6 months, looking for someone to fill the silence. I saw my name forgotten within a generation, a tombstone eroding in the wind, my legacy amounting to 0 souls saved, 0 lives truly transformed, just a biological existence that consumed resources and left behind trauma. It was a wasted life, a tragedy of potential. "This is the harvest of the path you were on," he said. "Is this what you want to leave behind?" I screamed. I screamed no, with every fiber of my being. I grabbed the hem of his robe, the robe that looked like light woven into fabric. "Please," I begged, "let me go back. Not for me, for them. Let me tell them who you are." Jesus looked at me, and the fire in his eyes softened into a pool of infinite mercy. He crouched down, bringing his face level with mine. "The decree is set," he said, his voice vibrating in my chest. "But mercy triumphs over judgment. I am sending you back, Yasmin. But you cannot go back as you were. You must go back as a witness." He gave me 3 instructions, searing them into my mind. 1. Tear down the altars in your home. Let your house be a house of prayer, not performance. 2. Speak the truth to your children, even if it costs you your reputation. Tell them of the Son, not the system. 3. Love your husband as I have loved the church. Serve him not out of duty, but out of the overflow of my spirit. He placed his hand on my chest, over my heart. Go. The word was a cannon blast. I felt myself being sucked backward, a violent tearing sensation as if I were being squeezed through a straw. The pain returned instantly, a crushing weight on my chest, the fire in my nerves. My eyes flew open. The paramedics were there, the paddles of the defibrillator hovering over me. My body convulsed. I gasped, a ragged, ugly sound, inhaling the air of the earth which now tasted like dust compared to the air of heaven. My daughter was screaming, but now it was a scream of shock. "She's back! She's back!" I couldn't speak. My tongue felt like lead, but tears, hot and uncontrollable, streamed down my face. I looked at the ceiling of my living room, and it looked different. The veil was gone. I saw the spiritual shadows lurking in the corners, but I also saw the light of the King protecting me. The recovery was slow, physically, but spiritually, it was an earthquake. The doctors called it a spontaneous return of circulation, a medical anomaly. I called it a resurrection. The first week, I couldn't walk, but I could pray. And for the first time, I didn't recite Arabic words I barely understood. I spoke to him. Isa, I whispered. Jesus, my Lord. When I finally stood, I walked to the living room. My family watched, confused, as I took the holy ornaments, the superstitious amulets we kept for protection, and threw them into the trash. "Mother, what are you doing?" my son asked, terrified. I turned to him, and for the first time he saw a fire in my eyes that wasn't anger. "I am making room for the truth," I said. It was hard. My community rejected me. They called me an apostate. They whispered that the lack of oxygen had damaged my brain. But I didn't care. I started reading the Bible, devouring it like a starving woman. I realized that the problem wasn't just in my culture. I looked at the world with the eyes he gave me. I saw that 85% of people living in the so-called Christian West are just as lost as I was, inoculated with a tiny dose of religion that keeps them from catching the real thing. I saw that we are a generation of orphans, trying to buy identity with likes, with careers, with political affiliations. We are spiritually anorexic, feasting on the junk food of the world while the bread of life stands at the door, knocking. The diagnosis is fatal. We have replaced relationship with religion and power with programs. The churches are full of people who want the blessings of the king, but reject the lordship of the king. The mosques are full of people submitting to a master they fear, but do not know as father. So I ask you now, you who are listening to my voice, stop scrolling, stop distracted, look at your life. If your heart stopped this very second, if the screen went black, what would you see? Would you see a father running to embrace you? Or would you see a judge asking for a resume you don't have? Do you know him? I don't mean do you know about him. The demons know about him. I mean, does he know you? Have you surrendered your pride? Have you torn down the altars in your living room? You might be sitting in a church pew every Sunday or kneeling on a rug 5 times a day, but if you are not born of the Spirit, you are just a well-dressed corpse. Are you tired of the performance? Are you tired of the heavy yoke of trying to be good enough? The time is short. I saw the edge of the cliff, and I tell you, it is closer than you think. You do not have promised tomorrows. You have this breath, this one right now. The king is not looking for employees. He is not looking for slaves. He is looking for his children. He is looking for the broken, the weary, the ones who know they cannot save themselves. He is offering you a trade, your rags for his riches, your sin for his righteousness, your death for his life. But you must choose. You cannot serve 2 masters. You cannot hold on to the world with one hand and Jesus with the other. You must let go. My name is Yasmin. I died on a Tuesday in August. I was a slave to religion, and I returned a daughter of the king. I have lost friends. I have lost status. I have lost the comfort of the familiar. But I have found the pearl of great price, and I would die 1,000 times over, just to touch the hem of his garment again. The veil has been torn. Do not stitch it back up with your pride. The king is coming. What will your answer be when the flatline sings its single final note? Will you be ready?